Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Jason Weil. This is the Jupyter Frontends meeting for Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. Thanks so much for joining. Happy Halloween, everyone. So we have a couple of items on the agenda. If there's anything you want to discuss on the record, please add it to the agenda on HackMD. The first topic is something I suppose for myself and Jeremy to discuss, the JupyterLab 4.3.0 release. I just took a look at the milestone, and it looks like the last blocker, which was upgrading YDoc, was just closed recently. Thanks for doing that. So I think we're good. Jeremy proposed releasing 4.3.0 today.
Yeah, that's I think that would be great. I don't think there is any other issue left in the backlog. And if some people are interested, we could even do it at the end of the call if there is time. Like I'm happy to show how to do it with the releaser if some of you are interested.
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about doing this release without having a like a blog post or something about doing more of a soft launch. I think that's okay. Um, People will upgrade as they install the new version of Jupyter.
Yeah, I think we can start working on a blog post in the meantime,
Okay.
and then maybe there will be a few more fixes in 4.3, dot one, then dot two, and so on. Yeah.
Okay. And then Notebook 7.3, is that going to come out the same day?
It's not going to come out today for sure.
Okay.
There are a few more issues left, I think, a
Okay.
couple, and it's still a beta at the moment. I think I don't know, maybe at least a week. Um, Last week I mentioned an issue that is quite annoying. It's related to uh, caching that is happening with some users. So every time they update to 7.x or 7.2, 7.3, they experience a blank screen, which is really annoying because then they have to either reinstall in the proper environment or do something else. And I think there is a way to fix it, but it's not done yet. And I think it would be great. Otherwise, we're gonna be hit again by this in 7.3 for sure. Mm.
Okay. Um, You were also, I think, in the middle of typing when I called on you. There are a couple of 4.4.0 related items. Is there anything to discuss here?
Yeah, I think the what we could discuss is what we want to do after the 4.3 release. So usually we wait a couple of days, maybe weeks. So we have like fixes and landing on the main branch, and then we make the releases from the main branch. But now, since there are quite a few things that are already targeting for the 4, maybe it would make sense to branch out like right after the 4.3 release and start merging PRs that are ready for 4.4, so we don't have them, too long in the backlog and potentially having conflicts in the long run and so on. So yeah, it's a little bit different than the usual process, but I think it's also fine to do it like this. So there are a couple of PRs that will require a bit more testing. So if we can get them merged as soon as possible, that's even better, I would say. Yeah. So
Mhm.
if anyone has any objection on this, so feel free to comment here, or I guess we could also continue that in the 4.3 release plan issue, I think, if needed. But yeah.
Yeah, I've been talking with some colleagues who are trying to deploy RTC, and they're seeing some bugs that range from being annoying to being blockers. I just opened a pull request. Jeremy gave me some feedback overnight about it to address one of them. This particular pull request is in JupyterLab, not in Jupyter Collaboration. So I think it would be a good candidate for 4.4.0. Anything else that's related to RTC, like readiness, compatibility, would be good.
Yeah, absolutely. There are other PRs that should fix some other RTC issues that we've been seeing for a long time.
Yeah,
So
someone was just talking about this morning about an autosave pull request as well. There's a couple of pull requests about autosave um, that came out recently that I think now is a particularly good time to work on that because autosave is a very valuable feature, but it also has a uh, it also has a certain obligation to test at load. Okay, any other suggestions for 440? I agree. Jeremy's adding into the notes, adding create a 43x branch soon. We typically do that like right after 430 is out, right? So that could be as soon as today.
um, now, yeah, that's what I was saying earlier. It depends. Like usually we were waiting a few days and maybe a bit longer before creating the branch.
So the
But in
practicality here, I think, is the number of pull requests which are targeted for 4.3x
yeah,
larger than the number of pull requests which are targeted at 4.40. And I think at this point, this is like an equal split. So there is, like, usually if we were able to fit in lots of things into the previous release, say 4.30, we wouldn't have too many larger pull requests waiting. But because we had a feature freeze a long time ago and the beta was uh, pretty long this time because of release blockers, we accumulated a number of larger pull requests waiting to be merged into 4.4.
yeah, I guess what we want to minimize is the number of backports that we have to do.
And conflicts. So
And
that's,
conflicts. Yeah.
yeah, a trade-off between these two. I think backports right now will be cheap, possibly cheaper than conflicts, as long as the bot works. So I agree with the idea to quickly branch off 4.3.x and start backporting and releasing from a branch.
Okay, then let's do this.
All right. Looks like Mike is next on the agenda.
So this is just a quick announcement to mention that the next meeting will be in November, which means that this will be the first meeting of the month, and we'll try to find some time, or rather we will allocate some time to accessibility related topics. And if anyone watching this recording is interested to join, there might be some interesting discussions. We had a number of issues in triage meetings that were related to accessibility. Some of them were already closed because they were based on automatic testing using accessibility trackers, which didn't properly account for the complexity of JupyterLab, but some of them are real issues and we do not necessarily have a path forwards how to tackle them, one of which is syntax highlighting and color contrast for that, but we can talk about this more next week.
Yeah, we had a good discussion about accessibility issues yesterday at Triage because a contributor from IBM ran IBM's accessibility checker on JupyterLab and Jupyter Notebook and opened issues about things. Not all of them are still open. Um, some of them are duplicates of existing issues or were not strictly relevant, like the tool produced an automated alert that was not a real issue. But we did find some good issues, and it was also a good reminder of the accessibility issues that we still have. So yeah, that would be a good thing to prioritize next week because it's the first Wednesday of the month. Um, and speaking of upcoming meetings, 2 weeks from today is November 13th, which is the next community call. The DEI group is going to be hosting it, and the Front Ends Council has very graciously allowed this time slot to be used for it. So um, it'll be for that. I'm going to edit my message here. Um, the community call has its own HackMD doc. So if you're interested in presenting a Jupyter thing that you've worked on, please let us know. There's also a blog post um, that I'd recommend or I'd ask people to please share with their circles. I think we share it with the SSC. Um, so please, we usually get a lot of people showing up to these calls who we don't normally. So please share, and we'd love to see everyone there. Okay. So I also see a thing, I don't know who wrote this in, but JupyterLab deck, was that you, Nick?
I added it to the discussion because I saw there was Nick in the call,
Oh,
and
okay.
I was wondering
Oh, y'all keep adding more virtual rendering, y'all gonna keep breaking custom layouts. There's nothing for it. Like, if you turn it off, it'll mostly work. But, I mean, you know, carry on. Sorry.
the
Okay.
question I think was more about so I think it's there was still this issue about updating to 4.1 and notebook 7.1. And I was wondering, it was the main issue related to the virtual notebook, or is it because of lack of maintenance time on the project? I was just curious about the current
Yeah,
state.
I mean, that one pissed me off because I got to the end of supporting 4.0 and then 4.1 broke it. You know, like every minor release breaks the DOM that relies on, because JupyterLab Deck is a terrible hack that relies on being able to manipulate the DOM. So if you make a presentation and you want something from the bottom at the top, you can't have that. You know, like, it just won't do that. It's just going to be gone. So yes, I'd like to do it. I'd like to spend some time on it. I have not given a talk that I needed to update with it yet recently, and that's when those things usually align, because that is my particular itch of, you know, presenting from JupyterLab is kind of trash. There's so much stuff going on. I need to show less stuff, but the stuff that I show needs to be good, and it's got to look good, not look like whatever, whatever it is. And there's a lot of constraints that are different when you're in a presentation view, and there's a lot of different expectations that people have for what a presentation should look like, and there's a lot of dynamism that people want. So I'd love to do it. I'd love to upgrade it. You know, and maybe I'll, find some time now that 4.3's out the door. But for people that are trying to do deep customization, the changes that have been made recently are very painful to the DOM. And then testing it is always painful. So yeah, I mean, I want it back up for JupyterLite sites. Like, it tastes great in there. I mean, number of years back, we had some money from someone, NSF, whatever, to get a spreadsheet going. And we got we didn't get that. You know, we got grid, and it's canvas based and inaccessible and all that stuff. I mean, really, you know, if lab was going to be something that you could use to do an entire PhD, you know, course of study, right? Like you'd have to do some presenting from it. You'd have to do some note taking from it. You'd have to do reference management from it. You probably have to do some like budget stuff or, you know, whatever, like getting access to hours in like in a spreadsheet kind of thing. So I see presentation as something that we should bring in more core, and we cannot delegate to something like Reveal.js, which also has breaking changes every like trying to code around that for Rise. I gave up on that. You know, so there was a JEP, and it got closed, of a generalized page model. You know, not everything is always a stream of cells with a toolbar at the top and, you know, crap on the sides and whatever. And that never got any, you know, that never had any legs. That was back in the NB Present day, which had the same limitations, right? Like, you know, you change some bootstrap, now it breaks. Someone put some custom CSS in, now it breaks. You know, so moving that out of the CSS regime and into a logical regime where you could move stuff around on a page would be amazing. And I think belongs in core. It's just I don't have the stomach to actually make that happen. Because if it doesn't work with all the extensions, like if it doesn't work with widgets or it doesn't work with, I don't know, whatever, like then it's not useful, you know, and clearly it breaks between minor revs. Yeah, it's just you have to put so many, the number of once you say there aren't any opinions, there's just a schema for how you put stuff on the page, then it gets crazy, right? Like, you know, everybody's making assumptions about where a thing is in the DOM, like insert next cell. What the hell does that mean? You know, that doesn't mean anything if you're on a 2D canvas state machine that allows you to go to different canvases. So yeah, I mean, presentations, rich text editing with Prose Mirror, those are like 5.0 features, right? Like if you're gonna really bring something to people that makes them want to use this for more than just computation, I would see those as being actual flagship features. I mean, I'll work on deck. I just haven't done any talks. You know, that's all it is to it. But yeah, deck's very much a personal itch project, and I'm sorry if people, you know, rely on it for stuff, but like it's not my day job, you know. Giving talks is not my day job.
Yeah.
Right? So building
I was wondering, like, in terms of ownership of the project, if you would like to keep it under your own, ownership, or if you would like some other people to help with maintenance of the deck. There are a couple of PRs, I think, that were open a few months ago, and I don't know, maybe they need a review, but I was wondering also if you would be open for like to get some help on this, or if you would prefer to keep it as your personal project.
I mean, it's BSD3 clause and fully documented, so fork it if you want it, but I'm not going to make any particular comment in that regime.
Since you mentioned other kind of custom applications, I kind of have been wondering if Lumina was supposed to be kind of a comprehensive GUI library, because I kind of personally find that I feel like there are a lot of gaps in Lumina. And I've also been kind of using the Jupyter UI toolkit now, so I was wondering if anybody knows about what the original plan for Lumina was. Something like it obviously doesn't compare to something like Qt.
Yeah, I mean, I think they fulfill different roles. You know, the big rock, Lumino manages big rocks. I think everybody
To me,
that's done.
I mean, to me, I think I see Lumino as mainly doing the communication layer with signals.
So
Sure, yeah, that's fine. Go for it.
I don't think So to understand the context, I think you need to go back in time and first understand that the ES library, like the batteries of JavaScript at the time, were much worse. So
Mike,
many
I'm
of the
sorry,
functions,
you said what library? I just missed what you said
yes,
there.
JavaScript, the core JavaScript was smaller and worse. It didn't include many things. So you had to have implementations for even things like iterators. And back then it was called Phosphor. It provided you with a lot of like sane containers, sane data structures, and a UI oriented towards web applications with layouts which are composed of multiple panels, trackable things, menus, etc. And that's the use case. That's the niche that it was filling. And
Yeah, that
based on
makes sense.
Phosphor/Lumino, other applications were built, such as Theia, which looks very similar to VS Code and uses some of the components like the Monaco editor of VS Code, but which is not JupyterLab, and also needed to use a similar library and also chose Phosphor because it was attractive. I think that the Phosphor/Lumino was never intended to be fully fledged, featureful UI toolkit. And that's why there is Jupyter UI toolkit now. And I don't know, I cannot say confidently because I wasn't around at that time when it was being developed, but it feels to me like the leaves, the end widgets at the kind of bottom of the DOM tree were always intended to be created using either standard HTML components or React or another UI library of your choice, of the choice of extension developer.
Yeah, I mean, part of it was we couldn't use React because it had a stupid nebulous license that we couldn't use. And that, you know, it was like in the ODA 35 era or something like that, that actually got softened. And we brought React in, and now we've got React problems, you know, whatever. But yeah, I mean, a UI toolkit that has the contract of a DOM node and doesn't try to be too clever. Let's ignore VDOM renderer and stuff like that. Like, the node is a thing. It is a real thing. It ends up on the screen. You shouldn't rebuild them whenever you feel like it and snowball your screen. Like, those kinds of errors are not something that an application should take if an extensible component inside of it screws up.
Yeah.
So, you know, I feel like the stance is fine. We can't get rid of anything now. But I really don't think it needs sliders and knobs and all that kind of junk, right? Like that, there are a billion other things for that. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Makes
Yeah, like
sense.
I've used MUI, which is an open source flavor of the material UI design that Google uses for a couple of Jupyter projects like Jupyter Scheduler, and I think parts of Jupyter AI are using MUI widgets. There's a free tier which is open source, and there's a paid tier which is like proprietary, but I've never needed the proprietary one. I know for a while we were also looking at the FAST system, which Microsoft had built.
Well, that's
Which,
what that's what the base components are in the UI toolkit, right? Task
yeah,
Foundation,
we are
which
using
is
that, yeah. But we haven't used it for everything, every Jupyter project.
I'm trying to remember actually, there was a discussion about bringing the UI toolkit into the Jupyter org. Did that happen?
The UI toolkit into the Jupyter org.
Because that's an official
Vaguely
Jupyter project now, is it, or did we do that?
I'm looking at the GitHub and it's still listed as being under contrib, so it hasn't been migrated yet.
Okay, I thought there was some discussion going on about the deprecated library underneath, but
I'm looking.
That's correct, there were, but the move hasn't materialized or hasn't been made just yet.
Yeah, they definitely moved on, and you're not going to find good docs for it anymore.
right, I've had that challenge working with the UI toolkit lately, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and as I pointed out in chat, it does things to like object. It does prototype pollution as a service, and in order to do all of its magic things, yeah, I don't know. I don't. Yeah, it's gross. If you get there first, then you can beat it, and it won't do a broken polyfill. But if you can't beat it for some reason, then your stuff is going to break if it relies on magic TypeScript metadata introspection, whatever nonsense. It's brutal. It's brutal. It's the worst kind of bug to find. It's all inside a closure. You can't patch it.
Yeah, thanks Jeremy and Mike for sharing the Team Compass issue. Looks like this was late last year. I don't even think I personally did not vote on this. So yeah, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be action taken as a result of that.
So I think the fact that it lives in contrib is fine because we depend on other dependencies that are outside of the Jupyter orgs anyway, and moving it to the JupyterLab org is not going to change the maintenance state of that project unless some people would like to step up and help, maintaining it, because now it is part of a new of a Jupyter organization on GitHub. If that's the case, then that's something that could be a good argument, I guess, to move it to JupyterLab on GitHub. But apart from that, I don't know if it's really.
Yeah, I've had some interest in potentially improving the UI toolkit, but yeah, I was kind of curious what people are thinking about. I guess Frederick is not, I think Frederick has kind of stepped back, right? So I'm not sure what the outlook is for maintenance right now. And I guess the future of the UI toolkit.
Yeah, I think he did some very small maintenance on the repo for the past couple of months. And at some point, there was like a huge PR that had to vendor most of the fast components, which I think is I don't know, like it sounded like it looked like something that we should not do because then you're gonna take ownership of all of these components and gonna have to maintain them. But I think the arguments were that you didn't have choice. You had to do this if you wanted to keep them because the upstream libraries were not shipping them anymore. Apart from that, I don't know. But if you want to spend some time on it, then that would be great for sure. Like it's there, it's being used in JupyterLab, so we should definitely have some people working on it.
I mean, I think there's a better outlook for so there's Fast Foundation, which is the UI components, right? And then there's Fast Element. I guess Fast Element has a better outlook in general because that's still being maintained and isn't upgraded. Right, so.
Microsoft has the worst track record for creating and killing UI frameworks on all platforms. The worst.
Even worse than Google?
I mean, Fuchsia, Flutter, like they're not supporting that. The Fuchsia or the Flutter community is forking it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's people look at something like, oh, why aren't you using Monaco? Why are you using this thing that's made by a single dude over in Europe? Because Marin is awesome and makes awesome stuff, and our stuff keeps running because CodeMirror is really good. Even after he paid the CodeMirror 6 tax. So I don't know, man.
Anyway, thanks for the discussion.
All right, we are at 36 minutes past the hour. Are there any other topics that folks want to talk about on the record? All right, I'm not hearing any, so I will stop the recording. Thank you all for attending. We will see you next week. Remember, next week is an accessibility focused week because it's the first of the month. So take care, everyone.
Great.
See you
Thanks
next
for
time.
hosting. See ya.
Take care.